And we are live here, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. What's up, guys? Nick Scripp on the P2W Fantasy Podcast. Have a day off today. Was up pretty late last night on a 4-hour stream with the guys at Fantasy Points, which was fun. I had to do some stuff today, so figured day 2 of the draft, recovering from drinking beers and talking football all night with the guys from round 1. Took a day off, so I'm here live, going to do a little rant on some day 1 winners. Very, very interesting stuff from day 1. A lot of exciting trades, big moves. I think it's going to be very fun for fantasy football in this coming season. So we'll talk about a handful of winners. We'll save the losers for another time, another day. But if you're here, stick with me.
Play to win, no fear to give. I feel but I can't forgive. I go all in this time, yeah, I won't regret. I'll pick the best on trip, they don't understand. I play to win, yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Oh, play to win, I play to win. Yeah, I play to win, I play to win.
All right. So before we get into the show, as always, this podcast is partnered up with the Fantasy Points Media Group, which is a branch of Fantasy Points, fantasypoints.com. Go check it out. One-stop shop for everything. Fantasy football, DFS. They have some golf stuff on there now. A lot of great stuff from some of the best in the industry. And guys like Scott, Graham, Wes, they're dropping stuff nearly every single day. If you use a promo code P2W22, you can get a discount, and it's well worth it because, again, everything you're looking for is in one spot. So let's get off to the show with some winners from day 1. I want to start off with the Detroit Lions, who had Aiden Hutchinson, who a lot of people thought for weeks now was going to be the number 1 overall pick. He fell to number 2. He went to Michigan, so he stays in Michigan. Aiden Hutchinson, 6'7", 260, ran a 4.7, 440, had a really good 3-cone drill, which is important for that position. He was the Heisman runner-up in 2021, which is wild to think about because not a lot of defensive players get that sort of notice to be right in the mix of winning it. A lot of people speak on his character. He was a 2-time captain. Lance Zierlein labeled him as having legendary weight room, having a legendary weight room grind. 62 total tackles with 14 sacks in 14 games. He had a great season, and I think he really fits what Dan Campbell has been pushing. He talked about biting the kneecaps, but I think he's just a guy of high work ethic and accountability, and I feel like Aiden Hutchinson really fits what Dan Campbell is trying to build with the Detroit Lions, who were in a ton of games last season. If you think about it, they lost plenty of games by like 3 points. They tied the Steelers. They had an upset. So they're a team that was very competitive last season, and grabbing him at 2 kind of fits what they're trying to do. And then they had a trade with Minnesota, and I actually thought Minnesota was going to grab Jameson Williams because that would have meant him and Justin Jefferson in the same system. But Jameson Williams, a lot of people thought might have been the first wide receiver off the board. The guy had a great season last season, 78 catches, 1,561 receiving yards, which was 5th in college football, and he had 15 touchdowns. Looking at what he did last season, 9.3 yards after the catch per receptions, 13.6 yards per target. He had elite numbers, and he was an elite separator. He got open on a class high 85% of the time. Only 8% of his career receiving yards came off of screens. That's from a Scott Barrett article. The guy is an elite playmaker with the ball in his hands. He's got electric speed. He did tear his ACL. They thought that if he did run the 40, he was healthy. He might have ran like the 4.2s or like the low 4.3s, which would have been interesting. I think that this is a great move for Detroit because I don't think they're in win now mode. I really thought that the Falcons might have bit on Jameson Williams just because he's a guy recovering from an injury. They don't need to rush him to be ready week 1. And that kind of fits the Lions as well. I think they're a team that wants to be competitive, but at the same time, they can give this guy some time. So seeing that they took both Hutchinson and Jameson Williams in the first, I feel like the Lions are a big-time winner. And to me, it's a bit annoying because, I'm a Bears fan, but the Detroit Lions continue to do things the right way. And we got guys in the comments. My guy, Dan Brown, have Coach Craig as well. Really appreciate you guys. If you are listening on Twitter, head over to YouTube because you can actually comment and I can see what's going down. But yeah, Lions are a big winner for me to start this NFL draft, talking round one. Want to scroll down. So the Falcons, I feel like, so Kyle Pitts is a big winner. And a lot of people will question, like, well, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, two guys that have some good size. Maybe they're too similar in their builds and what they can offer. But for me personally, Drake London was my wide receiver one in this draft. And I feel like from a talent perspective, if you're looking at somebody to come in and draw attention enough to make Kyle Pitts have some more freedom on the field, we could have looked at somebody that might have complemented Kyle Pitts more. But I look at it as they took the best wide receiver in the draft for me. 6'4", 219, Drake London, 88 receptions for 1,084 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. He had a lot of these stats are from, again, go check out Scott Barrett's article on fantasypoints.com, but he had the second most receptions per game and 10th most yards per game by any Power 5 wide receiver since 2002. So a lot of people look and say, well, he's this big contested catch guy. Maybe that's all he was good at. He did convert 68% of contested catches, but he was also second amongst all Power 5 wide receivers with missed tackles forced. He had a 92.4 PFF receiving grade, and that was only behind Devonta Smith and Elijah Moore. So he was graded very well, made guys miss. He had a ton of yardage. He did go up and grab what was, left for him in the air. He had an elite breakout age, elite market share for his metrics, super productive, hyper efficiency per his routes. 85% of his routes came from the outside. So I know that some people, predict that he's going to be a slot guy in the NFL, but I feel like Drake London is a guy that can do a bit of everything. And for me, he was the wide receiver one. I mean, he came in as a freshman and started for USC on a team that had Pittman Jr. and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he's very talented, and I think if we were worried about guys double and triple teaming Kyle Pitts, this kind of alleviates that worry because, again, for me, they took the best wide receiver. And that's something that we'll have to see as the season goes on. And that's something that I feel like people can debate. But this is good for Kyle Pitts. I actually think this is great for fantasy for Drake London as well, because when we're looking at competing for targets for the wide receiver position, this was a depth chart with Zacchaeus, Damiere Byrd, and Auden Tate. Kyle Pitts is going to demand a lot of targets, but he's coming into a system where he's right now the wide receiver one. And that to me is a huge winner for both Kyle Pitts and Drake London. So I want to scroll to the Jets. I think the Jets were a big time winner in this draft. And I do want to note that I feel like they should have traded for A.J. Brown. I feel like knowing that A.J. went for a later pick and they were tied in all of these rumors, I feel like A.J. Brown could have been a target of theirs. How it looked behind the scenes, we're not sure. I know A.J. Brown and Elijah Moore are boys, and I was actually kind of surprised that that deal didn't get done because I feel like there would have been a push from other guys to get A.J. Brown in that system. But let's look at what they did do. So Sauce Gardner, great pick, fourth pick overall in the draft. When we look at a guy that kind of reminds you of Jalen Ramsey a little bit, just because he aggravates guys. The guy, people say he's cocky. I think he's competitive and confident. I think you can go kind of either route. And I think we talked about it yesterday on the stream for Fantasy Points. I think for the cornerback position, having guys that are going to annoy wide receivers, have this big set of confidence and be super competitive, that's what you really need, especially in an NFL game where wide receivers and QBs dominate the league. And we see it with these guys getting paid. So I feel like Sauce Gardner for the Jets was a huge pickup, especially seeing that on the other side of the ball, they really did need some help. And it's a guy 6'3", 190 from Cincinnati. Didn't, a lot of people have said it already, but he did not allow a receiving touchdown during his 3-year career. You can say that people avoided throwing towards him, but at the same time, like, playing for 3 years and not allowing a touchdown. I don't care what the asterisk is. I don't care who he played against. That's impressive. 40 tackles last season. He ran a 4.41. That's a great pickup to me. Great pickup to me. And then we scroll down and see what they did do for the wide receiver position. I would have liked Drake London, who I talked about already, to go to the Jets. I feel like that would have been a nice 1-2 punch with him and Elijah Moore. But Garrett Wilson, who a lot of people had as the wide receiver one in this class, 6 foot 183, ran a 4.38 40. Play strength plus the run after the catch ability was great for him. He had his big year this past season. He was a breakout in his sophomore year, but a guy that can play on the inside, play on the outside. I think he can make plays on all 3 levels of the field. I can see where Elijah is on the outside with Corey Davis, and they run with Garrett Wilson in the slot. 2021, 70 catches for 1,058 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns. One of the best, if not the best, separator in the class. A lot of people kind of labeled this guy as maybe the safest wide receiver pick in this draft. And again, you can argue that. Greg Cosell had a comp for him with Stephon Diggs. So maybe that's a reach. Maybe that's accurate. So I feel like going corner with Sauce, who brings a lot of flair to one side of the ball, and then Garrett Wilson, who a lot of people had as their wide receiver one on the offensive side of the ball, was 2 great moves for the Jets. And then later in the draft, they went and took a guy that I feel should have went earlier, and I think they made a move to make sure that they got him. So Jermaine Johnson, defensive end, 6'5", 254 from Florida, ran a 4.58 40. 1 year full-time starter with a lot of growth potential for him. He was number 7 in sacks this past year with 12. The guy was on Last Chance U, which is very interesting. He came from a JUCO and built his way up. Super solid athletic traits. They had to go and get him at this pick at 26 because he probably should have went somewhere between maybe like 15 and 18. I think a lot of guys passed on him that probably shouldn't, and they might look back later and say, hey, Jermaine Johnson was mocked to go higher than this. He shouldn't have fell to 26, and the Jets did a great job. So I feel like the Jets are a major winner. Again, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, and Jermaine Johnson there. All right, so let's talk the big trade of the day that really shocked people, and we'll talk about one that happened after that might have been even bigger. But Marquise Brown, and you can see on ESPN right here in the background, it looks like he's got some sort of ear going on. That's the Cardinals logo behind him because he was traded to Arizona for the number 23 overall pick, and a 3rd round pick was involved in here too. But Marquise Brown, I was shook because we know that this is Lamar Jackson's guy. Looking at their off-field workouts and the way that Lamar Jackson was celebrating when he did get him, Dave Kluge came out with a tweet that said, or that showed Lamar Jackson with Hollywood and Mark Andrews through 11 games in 2021, and looking at the difference between the two. Marquise Brown had 99 targets, 65 receptions, 6 touchdowns, and 16.7 average fantasy points. That was better in all of those categories than Mark Andrews, who, not taking anything away from Mark Andrews, but it just showed that Marquise Brown was Lamar Jackson's preferred target. Kyler Murray, big winner here because Kyler needed a deep threat to complement DeAndre Hopkins. AJ Green, he's aging out, man. They brought him back. I'm sure he'll still, have a role. Wasn't going to cut it, though, for what they're looking for to complement Hopkins and make Kyler Murray happy. And Rondale Moore is not that guy. I'm hoping that he can progress, but looking at all the games where he was utilized to have like 30 yards at the end of the day, he's not that guy. Marquise Brown, he's that dude. Marquise led Oklahoma in 2018 in receptions, 75, in receiving yards with 1,118. He also had 10 touchdowns that season with CeeDee Lamb as the wide receiver 2. Who was the quarterback? Kyler Murray. So these guys are back reunited. The first 8 games of the season for Marquise Brown, he had 3 games above 110 receiving yards. So he was balling out, had 6 touchdowns in his first 7 games as well. The impact of Lamar Jackson was evident. His play dropped off a bit too, but this is huge for Kyler Murray. I also think this is huge for Marquise Brown because I feel like Kyler can utilize his strengths. They've had a connection in the past, and we can also look at the Ravens and say, who's a winner for them with this trade. Got to bring up Rashad Bateman. And I think Mark Andrews will still continue to be somewhere between the best and the third best tight end in the game. His target share is going to be massive still, but this opened up doors for Rashad Bateman. He opened up the season injured, missed a bunch of games at the beginning of the year. He saw above 70% of the snaps for the first time in week 15. So he started getting involved later. He did have some decent games, as far as targets go. He had 4 games of 8+ targets after missing tons of time. Again, I brought up what Dave Kluge tweeted out before about Lamar Jackson preferring Hollywood Brown to anybody else in the system, just in terms of the receptions, the targets, the touchdowns, how fantasy worked out. Now the door opens up because if we look at the depth chart, it's Rashad Bateman, the 1 for the wide receiver position. Then we got Devin Duvernay. We got Prochet, Tylan Wallace. We got a couple guys that are just guys, and Rashad Bateman goes from maybe being the third most targeted guy in the system to being right behind Mark Andrews, if not kind of fighting Mark Andrews for some targets. So I think Rashad Bateman's a big winner in this. Will Baltimore go out and try to draft a guy in the second round? I'm not sure. Will they try to bring in another guy like a Jarvis Landry, who is still floating out there? I don't know, maybe. But this does open up doors for Rashad Bateman. I do want to finish off. We got 2 more big winners. One is the Giants. We can run through this pretty quick, but I thought they did great with their picks. I feel like Thibodeau is going to be a guy that people may regret passing on later. He was once thought of as the potential number 1 pick. Maybe he was going to go number 2. The Kayvon Walker rise, to me, a lot of people said it came after the combine, but I really felt like it just kind of came out of nowhere the last few weeks that he was this solidified number 1 pick. But Kayvon Thibodeau fell to the Giants at pick 5, 6'4", 254 from Oregon. He was once the USA Today High School Defensive Player of the Year. He led Oregon with 9.5 tackles, 4 loss and 3 sacks as a sophomore. He missed time with an ankle injury in 2021, but he still won awards. They talk about his traits of power over skills, and he's got good instincts. Could add, to his bag with moves. And then some directors, personnel directors, I saw quotes of him being somewhat similar to having the upside of Jadeveon Clowney coming out of his NFL draft, where he went as the number 1 pick. So I think Thibodeau is a great pick at number 5. He fell to the Giants, couldn't pass there. And then they went with Evan Neal, and Evan Neal takes some knocks, and I saw some quotes coming out saying that Alabama, the Alabama name gave him a push in the draft, but he's a guy that easily could have went as a top 3 guy as well. 6'7", 337 from Alabama. Dropped some weight in the offseason before, gave him a little bit more quickness there. Started right away in 2019. He was a 3-year starter against some of the best competition. I mean, if we look at who Alabama plays, I think he gets some knocks maybe about some of his movements and his consistency, keeping his intensity up, things like that. But the guy went from right guard to right tackle to left tackle, so he's got some versatility in where he can line up. He also just, again, has 3 years experience in an Alabama offense. So we can give Evan Neal some knocks on this and that, but he was one of the best offensive linemen available in the draft, and they took him at 7. So I feel like the Giants going 5 and 7, those are 2 great picks. Give their line a piece on the offense and a piece on the defense, and you got to talk about them. And the Eagles, got to bring up the Eagles. So scrolling down, Jordan Davis, they traded to go and grab him. I think that, the Ravens were targeting Jordan Davis, and they felt necessary to go up and trade for the guy. 6'6", 341 from Georgia, who was the best defense in the country this past year. 2021, 14 starts, 32 tackles, 2 sacks. He's got a lot of size and power. He finished number 9 in the Heisman. So to me, that says a lot, because we're looking at a defensive tackle being a top 10 finish for the Heisman. And they had a long list, the Georgia Bulldogs, of guys that are going to be drafted or already were drafted in this class. And I feel like Jordan Davis at 13, Eagles moved up and grabbed a guy that I feel like a lot of people rated pretty high in their draft boards. Then we got to talk about A.J. Brown, who is now on the Eagles. Again, I thought the Jets should have went and grabbed him, and he's got his picture updated. He's got the Eagle logo behind him. Number 18 pick for A.J. Brown, and they went and paid him right away, 4 years, $100 million with $57 million guaranteed. A.J. Brown, I think, the big thing for him is staying on the field. But when he is on the field, we saw a couple games last season that just scream like this is why this guy is one of the best, maybe a top 3, maybe a top 5, however you want to look at it, receiver in the league. Postseason versus the Bengals, 5 catches for 142 receiving yards and a touchdown. Balled out. December 23rd versus the 49ers, 11 for 145 receiving yards and a touchdown. Halloween versus the Colts, 10 catches for 155 receiving yards and a touchdown. So this guy being one of the elites in the league, trading the 18th pick to the Titans, who I guess desperately wanted Treylon Burks, it's worth it, man. They're a huge winner for that. And who else is a big winner just in general? We have to talk about it. And, he'll still get a lot of shit for, people saying he's not a great passer. But Jalen Hurts is going to be a great conversation in the offseason because it's going to be an argument, especially just, let's say, for redraft purposes. How many QBs are you going to take ahead of Jalen Hurts? That's going to be a great question this offseason. Jalen Hurts, QB 8 in 2021. He was tied for 6th in points per game with 21.41. So we can look at all the advanced rushing stats, which he was number 1 or number 2 in. So we know that his ceiling is already high because of his elite usage of his legs. Let's look at some of the player profiler stats for him as a passer. So they graded him as number 7 in money throws. And what's money throws? They say a pass requiring exceptional skill or athleticism, as well as critical throws executed in clutch moments. So number 7, according to Player Profiler, in money throws. Number 12 in red zone completion percentage. Number 10 in deep ball accuracy. Number 13 in red zone accuracy. So he had some good statistics looking at some of the advanced stuff. If we look at overall passing touchdowns, maybe not the best. Overall passing yards, maybe not the best. But if we look at some of those advanced metrics, being a guy that is pretty good in the red zone, better than a lot of guys with his deep ball accuracy, that says a lot to me. And then also for looking at the system around him in 2021, Devonta Smith, we had some games where, their connection looked great. Then we had some weeks where it kind of shifted away from each other. But this guy was number 10 in drop passes for the quarterback position because he had Jalen Reagor. I think he had Greg Ward and a bunch of other guys. I know he's got Goddard at the tight end position, but adding A.J. Brown to Jalen Hurts is phenomenal for fantasy because Jalen Hurts being a guy that had a top 10 fantasy finish this past season with a poor wide receiver core and a young rookie wide receiver, to me says a lot. So we know that his floor is going to be pretty safe because when he's having a bad day, or if he does have a bad day, he's going to make up for it with the fantasy points added with his legs. But now having A.J. Brown, one of the best wide receivers, most dynamic wide receivers in the league, his ceiling is huge. And I know a lot of people are still going to hate on Jalen Hurts. But again, looking at the fantasy numbers this past season and looking at how his ceiling is now pushed even further, he's going to be a massive, massive guy to talk about in the offseason. So if we recap winners, just going down the list. So Eagles and Jalen Hurts to me from day one. Giants with their 2 picks. I think Rashad Bateman, and then also looking at Kyler and Marquise Brown. Winners to me. The Jets with their 3 picks. And then Kyle Pitts, Drake London for the Falcons are mentioned. And then Detroit Lions mentioned them as well. Looking ahead to day 2, not going to dive too deep into this. I'm going to get off the mic here soon as I'm rambling on. But Sky Moore, George Pickens, Christian Watson, and I like John Mechie. Those guys still available with some guys still needing wide receivers left on this list. I'm hoping at 39, my Chicago Bears go and grab the best guy available there. Breece Hall, a lot of people thought that he might have went to the Bills in the first round. I think going to try to call this out, but I think Breece Hall is going to go somewhere in this range here, 5th or 6th to the Texans or the Jets. I feel like those are the 2 juicy landing spots as well, if you think about it. I talked about this before on a short like TikTok that I felt that the Texans were the best landing spot for Breece Hall, and Jets were top 3 as well. I think those are going to be 2 interesting spots to see if they actually go and bite on Breece Hall. Kenneth Walker, who is the RB2 for me, RB1 for some other people, still available. And Trey McBride, who caught more passes than most of the guys in the wide receiver group for this class, still available as well. So this is my group of best available for maybe fantasy. You can go down the list for some sleepers as well, but that group there. And day two starts off with the Bucks, Vikings, Titans, Giants, Texans, Jets, Bears, and then 2 Seahawks picks before the Colts pick at 10. It's going to be a good day. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have some sort of recap after day 2 as well, maybe some losers to throw in and kind of analyze that side of the ball. But appreciate you guys tuning in and enjoy the rest of the NFL draft. It's here. It's been awesome so far. Some crazy trades, some crazy picks, and I'm hoping for some more blockbusters as we go on.